I love Spider-Man. Can't you tell?
Calm down.
As a Spider-Man fan, we've been given more movies and TV shows than we know what to do with. And if you've been alive longer than Tom Holland has been Spider-Man, then you've witnessed multiple adaptations on the big screen, many cartoons, and a plethora of comics that are amazing, but also horrendous. Although I'd love to say many of these adaptations were received well, some definitely weren't. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. As I mentioned before, Spidey has been blessed to have a decent amount of his movies be received well. I mean, hell, I love all of these movies. However, with this video, I want to talk about one that wasn't received well initially. You see, I want to dive into this film and see whether the critics were right or if they were just being blatantly incorrect. And if you've been wondering which movie I'm talking about, well, it's Spider-Man 3. And although this movie has gotten a lot of fans in the past few years, it is still regarded by many people to be one of the worst, and critics also despised this movie. By the end of the video, I'm hoping to have at least converted one person to look at this film in a new light. Instead of listening to the sheep who tell you this movie is bad, listen to me, a truly credited and distinguished online content creator with nothing better to do in his free time.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, enough from me. Let's just dive into Spider-Man 3. It's me. Your friendly neighborhood. You know, I think the best course of action is to just go through the entire movie from start to finish and highlight parts I think are just great, awesome, or perfect. And if there's any story beats or moments that need to be highlighted more in detail, then your boy will go full faceless mode and detail it for you, you know, just like usual. So with that in mind, I've always appreciated how this opening sequence plays out, especially with how the second movie ended. Peter describes his life like he's in a state of euphoria. Everything is perfect. It sets the tone for the movie in such a good way. He's together with Mary Jane, on the brink of asking her to marry him. His Spider-Man persona is loved by millions of people within the city, and he's making time for things he couldn't before, like school and his relationships with others. It's a pretty big leap in progression that I think this movie carries over quite well. The comparison of Peter barely showing up to MJ's play in Spider-Man 2 to him being in the front row for her this time around is so sweet and shows how different he is compared to before, but also how trusting both of them are in each other, now that Spider-Man is no longer a secret identity for their relationship. Over the years, so many people on the internet have clowned on Mary Jane in this series. Are most of them 10-year-olds with no relationship history? Most likely. However, a section of this video will shine light on how nuanced this relationship between Mary Jane and Peter Parker truly is, that I think way too many people overlook. A major through line in this film is their relationship, so it's definitely going to be mentioned. One of my favorite parts of this film is Sandman, and I think how he's introduced is very well done. After escaping from Rikers, his first thought is to check on his sick daughter. Right from the beginning of the film, we know that this guy is going to have way different motives than most villains we've seen from this trilogy before. The way this film goes about introducing us to him through lines like these.
Not a bad person. Just had bad luck.
Is beautiful. I can't lie when I say I love everything about this scene. Getting initiated with Sandman's world, even in a small dose, really helps us understand him as a character way better. I also think this film does a fantastic job of giving us these very intimate moments between these larger than life characters. Having a character like Flint be in a small New York City apartment arguing with his ex-wife while his sick daughter watches is just very human. And there's countless moments like these littered throughout this film, just like in the previous two films. A great segue here is the moment Peter shares with Aunt May in her apartment. Seeing a Peter who's been so down on his luck find peace for once is so refreshing, but watching him share that with May is just so sweet. And this scene gives a lot of layers to May and Ben's relationships just through a simple monologue. And we all know by now that May's monologues are the best. It's rare that a Spidey film gives this much depth to Ben past his death. We don't see it at all in Holland's films, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 does a pretty decent job, but I feel like it's so naturally placed in this film. I love these little details of Ben coming from May and how their relationship started. Again, it just makes this movie feel grounded. But even though this movie's grounded parts are so interesting, this film knows how to hook you right into the action. This scene is so goddamn cool. I remember watching this scene as a kid and thinking how weird it was to see Peter being Spidey or doing Spidey stuff outside of his suit, but now, as a bigger child, this is so unique and different to me. Not to mention that the action set piece itself is so well made. Peter getting thrown through windows, Harry's dope-ass mask and snowboard glider, Peter trying to save the ring, and the tension culminating between Harry and Peter from the previous films to this was huge. Until Harry gets amnesia and fucking forgets everything from the previous two movies. I hate you, Avi-Arad. Look, I genuinely despise the Harry amnesia arc. Sam Raimi does his best to incorporate it naturally into the story, but it's so noticeable that it's a plot point for the audience to forget about Harry so we can build up the symbiote and Sandman. I'm of the opinion that Harry should have been the main villain for this film, alongside Sandman. However, for what Raimi had to deal with behind the scenes, I think this movie does a great job of incorporating each villain and tying it back into Peter's emotional arc throughout the film. And Harry's amnesia does lead to some really interesting things in this movie, like this line, for instance.
You have lovely friends.
My best friends. I'd give my life for them.
Or how his forgotten memories makes Peter and MJ live in the past, where things were easier for them. He makes them feel more innocent because of it. I think that's a pretty cool and interesting touch that this film decided to add. Speaking of innocence, I think this segues into MJ and Peter's relationship struggles perfectly. A lot of people see MJ kissing Harry and immediately call her every slur in the book, or that she's for the streets. But let's put on our critical thinking lenses for 1 second, shall we? One of the main scenes where people call MJ a bitch is when she gets upset in Peter's apartment about the critics making fun of her for her Broadway play, and Peter only helps by talking about himself. Yes, Peter gives advice in this scene. But just like I said, a lot of the scene takes place, he's making it about himself. She had just read a headline that's totally criticizing her performance, and she's genuinely upset about that. Peter doesn't understand how she's feeling because he's being praised for everything he's doing as Spider-Man right now. He's in a state of egotistical bliss. She even says this line here.
It's just, I look at these words, and it's like my father wrote them.
I'm convinced some people just didn't continue watching this scene because this line alone speaks volumes. Her anger and frustration is from insecurity because it feels like she's being talked down to again, like she's just back at home. And all she wants is her boyfriend to comfort her, just for one moment. And then the scene after being fired from her job, she sees her boyfriend kiss another girl in the same way they did years ago. So when she kisses Harry later, a man trapped in the past because his mind is literally a mess and doesn't remember anything, she tries to be comforted in it because she feels innocent there. But the moment she kisses him, she realizes she isn't like Peter and that it wasn't what she wanted or needed. I feel like MJ's feelings in this movie are pretty justified. And if you're criticizing her for doing it, then you have to at least criticize Peter for being just as much of an asshole or inconsiderate for doing the same thing on a much more national scale on live television. I feel like as I've gotten older, the more I understand the nuances of their relationship throughout the trilogy. And I appreciate Sam for writing them this way. It's a very adult thing to do. And since I love these films so much, I figured I'd give my piece on it and stick up for her a little bit. You know? Bringing it back to Sandman, his first transformation scene is literal perfection. The CGI, the music swelling throughout, zero dialogue, and the facial expressions of a CGI sand monster's eyes squinting so hard just so he can grab the locket of his daughter again is just beautiful. I don't know how someone can see a scene like this and immediately write off this whole movie. It makes no sense to me. This is so good. And this scene also continues his motivation for providing for his daughter as well, with no words. That's insane. And it leads into a great first encounter with Spider-Man 2. Yo guys, we're on the road to 10K, so if you like this video so far, hit that subscribe button. I'll give you my limited edition Spider-Man mask if you do. Alright, back to the video. I've always found that the way this movie goes about Peter's arc in the first half to be very interesting, because as a kid, you love to see your hero being celebrated but as I've gotten older and the nuances of his character started to show, you realize how egotistical he is in the first act. He does deserve a win. Christ, he was beaten to his lowest mentally in the last film, but his actions are pretty harsh even before he starts getting influenced by the symbiote, and I like that approach a lot. He's loved by the city. These people are enamored with him, so it gets to his head. His friend no longer hates him because he forgets everything he did, so instead of telling him about it, he hides it from him because his ego can be spared the hate. He feels so invincible that he intentionally kisses Gwen in front of a mass audience, with MJ watching right there. It's like his brain is fogged by his own selfishness, and it catapults in scenes like the dinner date sequence where he wants to propose to MJ. He talks with Gwen, introducing the same girl who Spider-Man just kissed in front of everyone to her, as if MJ wouldn't get upset by this, and continuously talks about himself as Spider-Man to relate to MJ's struggles. So when she finally admits to him he's been a selfless piece of shit and wakes him up to it, the symbiote finally bonding with him is the perfect moment for it to do so, since he's so vulnerable in that moment. Not only because he's frustrated about MJ, but also because he just found out Flint Marko killed Uncle Ben, so that makes him even angrier. And man, the symbiote arc Peter has in this film is phenomenal. I made a video detailing my issues with Spider-Man 2, the game's symbiote arc, and how it didn't give Peter enough time to kind of destroy him in a sense, and I cited Spider-Man 3 as a great example of how to do it, and I'm very much correct in citing it because this movie's portrayal of Peter with the symbiote is fantastic. The first thing this man does in the suit is kill Sandman, in a dope-ass action sequence, by the way, and not only does he not feel remorse, he tells Aunt May about it, and she wakes him up to the fact that no one should die out of revenge. And it doesn't stop there, because the symbiote to Peter is like an addiction. He notices the bad stuff that comes with it, but man, that high of putting it on and whooping some ass is too strong. I mentioned earlier how his ego before putting the suit on was at an all-time high. Well, the symbiote amplifies that characteristic, making him much more confident in his own way. I'm tired of pretending the scene is bad, because it's not.
This right here is my favorite thing.
Peter is on the fence with the symbiote at first, since he's warned not to touch it, but the tipping point being Harry confessing that he kissed MJ and stole his girl from him only started Peter's downward spiral into it. The man who was afraid his ego would be hurt in telling his friend about his father, gone. He even throws a pumpkin bomb at his face. The man who wanted to outperform his competition at work, gone. He gets Eddie fired, rightfully so, and then told him to.
You want forgiveness? Get religion.
And after the love of his life leaves him, he brings the girl that devastated her to her place of work, then outperforms her, and then literally hits her. When have we ever seen a superhero get this low before? We haven't. Genuinely, I've yet to see a superhero movie take a character and make him battle addiction and power like this, ever. Plus, everyone around him doesn't know there's an evil symbiote controlling him. That's one of my biggest criticisms of the video game, is everyone knew that there was a symbiote on Peter, so everyone knew he was acting different. Where in this movie, most people don't know why he's acting this way. There's much more nuance to it. Say what you want about the goofiness of his dance moves and what have you, but to watch a downward spiral like this in a superhero film with awesome action set pieces in between is astounding. His darkest moments lead to things like Harry's face being permanently deformed, Eddie literally preying on his downfall and turning into Venom, or Sandman being manipulated to help destroy him later on. This arc is so crucial to Peter's character, and while the second movie pushed Peter to his lowest from external factors, it's his internal factors pushing him to his lowest in this film that I think is not only beautiful and rare, but such an interesting take on a character who went through so much in his first two movies. While Sam Raimi had no intentions of using the symbiote in his first drafts, I literally can't imagine how Peter's arc would have gone without it. It's so crucial in this story and so well done, I don't know how else we would have got there. Sam Raimi really cooked with the symbiote arc here, man, and I love it a lot. So when Peter finally takes off the suit in the church, which is such a great scene by the way, the horror elements imposed here with how hard it is to take off, with it fighting to stay on Peter, was awesome. But I'd also like to take a moment here and appreciate Eddie's character a little bit, who becomes Venom in this scene. He's one of the characters in this film burdened with a ton of scenes that were cut for the sake of time, which sucks, because of the scenes we have, I don't think he's as bad as people make it seem he is. In the beginning of the film, we see that he's the complete anti-Peter Parker in personality. He comes into the Bugle strutting his stuff, he's confident and cocky, a smooth talker who isn't afraid to get what he wants. Where Peter is much more laid back, shyer, soft-spoken. We've seen it since the beginning of the first movie. Eddie is constantly trying to win over the Bugle so he can make his life better. He's also looking out for his relationship with Gwen.
I want a staff job, sir. I have a girl that I intend to marry.
Whether he would have done this or not isn't important, because it's the fact Peter was trying to do the same with MJ. So Peter's whole world is shook upside down, trying to compete with this guy. So once Peter gets the symbiote and loses that empathy and humility he's been holding himself back with, which, to be fair, he was already losing in the beginning of this movie, he just humiliates Eddie. Eddie did bring the firing on himself by plagiarizing, but Peter went out of his way to humiliate him in front of the whole office. And then a few hours later, take the same girl he liked a lot out on a date. Eddie got cucked hard. Yes, people wanted to see a steroided freak of nature Eddie Brock, but like, come on, how relatable would that shit be in these types of movies?
Calm the fuck down. I gotta get a pump.
I think making him this way is so interesting, and again, left Peter's arc with much more substance. One quick side note here, after Peter takes off the symbiote and has this discussion with Aunt May about marriage, this scene hit me like a truck. Seeing Peter so defeated that he takes up a small corner of the initial shot for the scene, to then giving back the ring to Aunt May saying he isn't ready for marriage was heartbreaking. But then Aunt May says this.
You start by doing the hardest thing. You forgive yourself.
I'll say this, Aunt May was Peter's emotional guardian angel in all three of these films. She just articulates the change in Peter's emotional states so well. She knows what to say. She's the perfect wise old woman that can enhance not only his life, but your life, if you let her speak to you. I feel like no Spidey adaptation gets this right anymore. God forbid the Holland movies didn't give a shit about this.
You know, that's why they call it a fling. And we flung.
She belongs to the streets.
I swear I just miss this type of energy in a Spidey film. And then MJ gets taken, and we get one of the most impactful suit-up scenes ever created. This is also one of the greatest Spider-Man trilogy moments ever made, by the way. After overcoming and dealing with everything he did in this movie, to put on this suit again as a symbol for change is just fucking exhilarating. Also, Spidey swinging into the battle with the flag blowing behind him and all the citizens of New York cheering is so patriotic and unifying. I might just buy an American Eagle. Let's go, baby. America, baby. Woo! Most of the final fight in this film I find very fun and exciting to watch. One of my favorite moments is definitely Harry and Peter teaming up. Even though the butler took an eternity to tell Harry the truth, which could have saved a lot of stress.
You're a fucking idiot.
It led to a great moment between them, and it was nice seeing them patch things up after all the shit they did to one another in this movie. Having Harry and Peter work together to save MJ was really cool, and Sandman and Venom were fun to watch too. I mean, their designs look really good here. But without a doubt, the most emotional moments weren't the fist fighting. It was the touching final moments between Peter and Flint, and watching Harry pass away in the arms of his own friends. I always found the death of Harry to be quite poetic. Where his father died by his own glider to try and kill Peter, Harry died by his own glider saving him, and with the backdrop of a sunrise to bolster forgiveness amongst Harry and Peter. Peter also learning that Flint wasn't a bad guy, but someone who just wanted to be understood. He was a man caught at a bad place at a bad time. Watching Peter learn how his uncle truly died is gut-wrenching, and the moment he forgives Marco, you can see in Peter's eyes how a weight has been lifted off his chest so deeply, and that's just great acting by Tobey Maguire right there. And this film closes out with another voiceover from Tobey as he looks toward his friend's casket and summarizes the point of this whole film.
It's the choices that make us who we are. And we can always choose to do what's right.
But finally, the last person who he needs to get forgiveness from, the love of his life, Mary Jane Watson. There's no grandiose final swing, a moment of triumph, no impactful score, no. It's just two people embracing because they've done so many bad things, lost so many good people, but continue to live on knowing there's room for good in both their lives, to the swell of somber music as the screen fades to black. Spider-Man 3 is a criminally overlooked and overhated Spider-Man movie. I've seen this movie a few times, and every time I watch it, I find that I like it more than the last time I did. We really didn't know how good we had it when this was considered one of the worst comic book movies ever made. The cinematography is gorgeous. The CGI is top-notch of this trilogy, for the most part. The actors give great performances. The story has so many layers, as I've detailed throughout this entire video. The pacing is so good. Like I mentioned before, there's so many down-to-earth moments here. And in my opinion, as much fun as a Spider-Man 4 would have been, I'm kind of glad it didn't pull through, because I think this movie is the perfect conclusion to Tobey's Spider-Man. Even in No Way Home, which I'm still in shock he was in, one of the greatest moments of my life going to see that movie, by the way. It was nice to only learn about his relationship with MJ had worked out, and that his character was left pretty stagnant other than that. I hope I could convince some of you to look at this film a little bit differently. With all the garbage we've been given from Sony, the MCU, the DCEU, it's wild that people talk so harshly on this movie even to this day. I do believe it has its problems, no doubt, but so many crucial great moments are passed over because of Peter dancing in a jazz club. Like, watch the Sandman transformation scene again. Please, please do so. Anyways, in the past decade, I think all of these movies are much worse than Spider-Man 3. So if you disagree, leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to help your boy out and get a shiny badge like my friends here, then you can become a member. You get access to some pretty cool perks, plus it'll help me make more content for you guys, and it will help me keep the lights on, which is kind of what I need here. Also, we're on the road to 10K, so please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, so you can become a part of the community. Please like this video too, as well, because YouTube likes when you do that, and it'll push this video out to more people like you who likes these kinds of videos. That's enough talking for me. I hope you go watch Spider-Man 3 again. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.